Happy Monday, guys! What is going on? Sorry we're starting a little bit late. Judging always runs long, but I hope some of you guys checked it out, and thank you all for being here. Let's get myself organized. I'm a little less than organized, but we're going to be doing some Gaia today. We're not going to be doing Gaia so much as we're going to be doing getting Gaia into 3dsMax and maybe trying to make an image, hopefully. Fingers crossed. I think we can do it. But Daniel, Oleg, Tassos, Dario, cheers to you all. Thank you for being here. Let's get this thing going, I think. Let's just hop right into it. Nitin, what's going on, buddy? Good to have you as well. Let's see. Let's get myself a little bit organized. Pop out the chat. There we go. That's going on. Let's get Gaia, which I think is still open. It is. So we'll just take a quick look at what is going on. This was the basically what we made in Gaia sometime last week, I think, I want to say. The only big difference is that we're using this texture node as like the main coloration for this whole thing. And then we added some snowfall, which was literally like a one-click issue. So like this was the erosion and snowfall and just a couple of little quick tweaks. And that's all that we did basically to get this to our final level since last time. So nothing major. I did try and export this bad boy at 16K because I wanted to see what we got out of that and how my computer would deal with it. And I have 64 gigabytes of RAM on this computer, and it would not export. And it seemed to get, I changed a couple nodes around to test a few things, and it would fail. First it was failing at a Ridges node, and then I changed the Ridges node to something else, and then it failed at something else. And at watching the task manager, at no point did it actually top out all 64 gigs. So it says even in the build that 64 gigs is experiment, or 16K and 32K are still experimental. So I don't think it was necessarily a RAM issue, but I don't know. Could be a bug. So we don't get to look at 16K yet, which is a little bit of a bummer because I wanted to see just how much more that got us over 8K. I mean, it's twice the resolution. But I was just kind of disappointed that I couldn't do it. I would love to see them, like, the idea that I kind of have in my head is like a shot kind of from this perspective, only zoomed in a little bit, but obviously the controls are still pretty awful. But I would love, if you can export it at 16K, and honestly I don't want this whole thing at 16K, what I want is like this one quadrant as 8K on its own for the foreground. I would love if there was a way to separate it. But we're going to go ahead and get to exporting. So I've already exported it. I don't know how long this one took to export. We will find out here in a moment. Where did I actually store this? Whoa. Anyways, got to figure out. Well, that's not where I thought it was going to be. Let's see here. I've got to organize this. I haven't figured out a system for using my second onboard NVMe drive, which I want to start using, and I need to get myself organized. But yeah, 16K build log on this one. You can see like it made it through those and then it stopped. But let's look at the 8K version, which I've not imported yet. Tasso, we are going to be talking about sizes as soon as we get into it, but I'm not going to be using it as a displaced plane. I'm going to be using the actual imported geometry, which I exported at 1024. We will see in a second, but let's see how long this one took to. So this one took like 7 minutes on my machine, almost 8 minutes to export at 8K, with a bunch of different maps. Let's take a quick look at them. So we have a detail map, and you get a couple different detail levels that come through. Some of them I saved as 32-bit TIFFs. Some of them is just PNGs. If the color map doesn't need to be 32 bits. You can kind of see what we have working with there. We got some banding in here that I tried to fix but didn't. So we'll deal with it in post or in 3D, which is kind of like post for Gaia. Dario, size doesn't really matter depending Took me a minute on that one. But it's one thing that I do think World Creator handles better than Gaia is units and actual scale. So we have two normals maps. We have the overall normal map. We have a details normal map. This is the snow map. I couldn't get the effect I wanted and the snow map I wanted, but we can probably level this one to separate the materials. And we got a color map and a details map. I think we already looked at that. Okay. That's not she said. It's not. I mean, like, I don't know whoever said that. Well, I'm not going to be goaded to go down that path. It's not going to end well. I will say something that I regret. I know it. Absolutely know it. I do not trust myself there. Okay, let's import some stuff. Dario, no need to apologize. So let's import the mesh first. And 8K, mesher OBJ. Should we go over... let's let this guy... Oh. 8 million faces. Methinks I did something wrong. Well, that's what... This live streams. I didn't have a chance to actually import this. Getting 8 million faces out of this. And we're not going to export it again because no one wants to sit around and watch things tick away for 7 minutes. So this was at 2048, and I don't know. It's 2048. I doubled everything for 16K, and it didn't export. I'm pretty sure this was at 1024. But let's quickly, I guess, go over what I'm actually exporting for those of you that have a question about it. So out of the final like geometry node, the snowfall node, we have a mesher node, which is what actually exports the mesh. If you want a mesh, which I do, and historically I've been setting that to 1024, which ends up being 2 million triangles, or it comes out triangulated. I haven't messed with the quads because I would imagine that's just going to give me less fidelity in the surface if it actually has to force everything into quads. So I've been leaving it as triangles. I haven't played with that yet though, but I've been leaving it as triangles, just OBJ, and I've been setting 1 unit to 1 meter. By default, I think that makes this a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer square. There's a way apparently to adjust it, but even Quad Spinner seems not to really recommend messing with that too much, and just kind of eyeballing the scale so where it's what you like, which triggers my OCD, let's say. But so right now it's set to 1 unit to equal to 1 meter. And then on top of that, you need a details map. Yeah, attempt to continue. And the details map is going to export a displacement for just the details with the scale set to whatever you're exporting that mesh at. So the mesh is currently set to 1024, which means that we also need to change. Yep. Something's it's unhappy about something. So you would set this to 1024 so that the displacement's calculating the right mesh base. Oh, this is annoying. And then, oh dear lordy. Let's see what happens. Maybe if we make it 0.5K, it'll stop complaining about things. Nope. It does this a lot, and sometimes it does crash altogether, and sometimes it just says it crashed and you can keep working, which is pretty charming initially, but not always charming. So details map. So all of these, this little orange circle just says that I'm exporting it, which you can either right click on it and mark for export or just hit F3. So this is going to give us a mesh. This is going to give us a displacement map for the mesh as opposed to displacing it off of a plane. And then normal map and normal map. The normal map out of the details is going to give us a local normal map. The normal map based straight out of this snowfall mesh is going to give us the overarching details, which we'll play with most likely today. Snowfall itself is also set to export, and that's going to give us the displacement map if we wanted to use a plane, which I don't think we're going to even do today. And then we have a couple different textures set to export. One is this texture, which attempt to continue. I think we're just going to have to deal with that today. But we'll be out of here soon. And if we turn off... you can't even see it at 1K. Oh, wait. Give it to me. Maybe? So this is going to give us this normals map, which we might want to use. And then our final color is also set to export. So I think that that's everything. Lastly, in the mesh that's actually exporting our displacement for snowfall, or for the final geometry, if you look at the build up here on the right, on snowfall, if you click on all, it's doing output plus snow, which is where we got that nice snow map. And why it's not black and white, I couldn't quite figure out. Need to work on it more. Their documentation on that part is lorem ipsum. So, who knows? Didn't figure it out. But I think that that's it for Gaia. If you guys have questions on anything I'm doing in Gaia, I'll leave this open and I'll try to answer them. But, okay. This is imported. I do not know why this came through as an 8K mesh. I messed something up. And so this is super dense, but hey, let's see what it gives us. And let's see what size it is. So right now it's like 127 meters by 127 meters, probably because I think my max is currently in standard units for some projects I've been working on. But let's go ahead and make a plane, and I'm going to just scale this up to 2,000 meters by 2,000 meters. Because that's kind of how I pictured it. As far as the scale that you should use, something within kind of the rough space that you think it should be will make it easier to set displacement values, and depth of field will be more accurate. Atmosphere will work more accurate. So I try to kind of scale things roughly into what I'm imagining them to be. But because it's not generating things specifically to begin with, a ballpark estimation is not bad. If I was planning on putting a person into this image, I would probably just scale it to the person in the rough space and then just kind of tweak things. You got to play a little bit loose, I feel, with this. Dario, that is a great question, and thank you for asking it. The main thing that's kind of like overrides any other considerations for me between World Creator and Gaia is they can both export meshes. But in the previous videos, you'll see that I worked with a much lower res mesh. This one's pretty high. I mean, this one's 8K and it's in triangles, so it's a 4K mesh. I don't know what I did wrong here. This should be 1000 by 1000 or 1024 by 1024 polygon mesh. So it's lower res than this. Like an 8 million polygon mesh for a background asset is kind of a lot. And kind of annoying because, right, like it's just all lines. Gaia allows you that one little node that I was talking about, this details node, gives you a displacement map that is specifically set to whatever resolution you're exporting the mesh to. As a result, you can have actual geometry inside of your scene. So we're setting up a camera, right? If we were just using kind of the standard way to use all of the terrain generators, which was taking a plane and displacing it, you can't see that until you're actually looking in a rendered viewport, which I find really annoying. You can't scatter that easily on top of it. It's hard to compose things. It's hard to set up cameras. It just bothers me. I don't like working that way. It makes sense for Unreal where you can deal with them like as though one and the same. But in something like a standard application like 3dsMax, I want to be able to see in my viewport exactly where these things are, especially if I have foreground elements or anything like that. With World Creator, you can export a mesh, but I couldn't find a way to export a displacement map that actually took into account that it's not, that, you know, the normals are now facing in all different directions. So that was the big thing. The second thing that I think is really, really nice about Gaia is that the color maps are actually useful. In World Creator, I found that you basically exported just... The only way to make it look any kind of good was you export all the masks to separate rocks from grass, from sand, from water, etc., etc. Just black and white mask, and then you set up individual materials for everything inside of, 3D, regardless of which render engine you're using, which is fine, but it also means then you can't use displacement on top of it unless you use displacement everywhere. Hopefully, it just gets really complex really quickly. Whereas for a background element, we probably won't use any maps besides the ones that Gaia gave us. So those two things are the two big winners for me. Amongst other things that I do like and don't like. World Creator, it's not at all a knock on World Creator, just that until they can give me a mesh with a displacement that's based off of that mesh, it's kind of a deal breaker, regardless of how good anything else is. But that's just me. I definitely... neither one makes it easy to try out their softwares, and this is a criticism of both of them. They both have like pretty big restrictions on their trials, and using this with a 1K... Gaia's limits everything to 1K in the free version. I don't know how you would even try and do that. At 1K, the results would be awful. We're going to see a lot of pixelation even at 8K. So, such is... Hopefully that answered kind of the question. I think I talked more about that a little while ago, a few episodes ago. Last time I was playing with Gaia. All right, we're going to do this in F-Storm. Things appear... Oh, we don't have any music on. Let's put some tunes on. Yeah. And let's just turn it down a bit because that's really loud in my headphones. And probably very quiet for you guys. So we'll turn it up just a little bit. Tell me how that sounds. Let me know if that's working for you guys. Okay. So you can see I've still not set up my base scene to be all set and ready to go for me. One of these days we'll get to it. Excuse me. Interactive renderer, we want that enabled. And let's get an HDRI in here. Really need to stop. Such a waste of time. It's like, what are we wasting right now? About 30 seconds, maybe, but like it's 30 seconds every time you open a new file. Got to go further on that one. All right, thank you, Oleg. I assume that that's a thumbs up about the music sounds. Let me know if it needs to change. The idea that I have in my image is a composition something kind of maybe sort of like this. And I'm also kind of thinking that it's going to be like a soft, misty morning. I don't know if we'll actually end up with that, but that's where we're going to start. Soft, misty morning. And so let's go find an HDRI. Soft mist. Ooh, that one might be a winner. That might be too morning. I don't know if we need a little bit of light or not. Let's start with this one and see what we get from it. Tassos, at least initially here, I'm just gonna get things going with. Oops, that's not what I wanted to move. I wanted to move this guy so that we can actually see it. Initially, I'm just going to get things kind of moving forward with just the maps from Gaia. And then later, we might do that. We might add some things in. I was really hoping to do 16K because I'm like, I wonder how close we can get to a 16K image before it starts breaking up. Obviously, I didn't make a separate foreground element for this one. And that's a little bit of a bummer for me. But, so we'll see. We'll see how far we get. Let's select this camera to see where it's pointing. Let's set a nice long, target distance so we can see it. And so I'm kind of thinking that we want something that's probably somewhere in like the 0.6 range is my guess. Gamma we can set it to. And for the material, we need to make it an F-Storm material. And let's just have a look at what it looks like white. Let's also save this. Call it Gaia Swirl. It's kind of a swirly landscape, which I think is fun. And I did that kind of as just because I thought it was fun and kind of cool looking in when we were making this guy, and it keeps growing on me. All right, let's see what it looks like white, shall we? Let's also just make sure that we're only on 2 of the 3 graphics cards currently in my computer, and that is correct. Do we want to go 1080? Let's go wide. Let's lock it, and oops, there we go. Okay, let's see what we get here. Prepare for fan noise. I'm going to predict some fan noise here. Tassos. Yes, it's not as easy as World Creator. World Creator makes it really easy and intuitive to export those, I found. And we're gonna have to level a map for like just the separation between snow and everything else. So you can do it. You can export flow maps, which we have a couple of, and a couple different scales of them. We have a few different options there. What we don't have is there's a few that like I tried to make and they just didn't come out well. So yes, you can do it. Sometimes it's just a matter of clicking and you get the map you want. Like setting whatever that export is, just set it to export and you get the map. Sometimes you don't get it. So it's a little bit less intuitive. But like the snow map that we do have, right, which we can actually open this right now and level it. We'll open it in Photoshop. I didn't have to do anything to export this besides have snowfall export. And then you can see up here we have the option of the output plus the snow. I just leave all of them on. I'd rather if I'm going to wait for it to render out, bake out and export, I'd rather have it give me everything. But you can see that we have a nice mask. I don't know why this is gray as opposed to black. But it is in 32-bit, so it's not gonna matter that much for us. Give that to black. And we probably don't need, we can take this all the way down to 8 bits. So now we have a map of the snow, or we should have a map of the snow, so that we can separate the snow material. So not a giant pain in the ass by any means, but nothing in Gaia I have found to be as intuitive as I feel like it should be. World Creator definitely wins there. There we go. Okay, back to Max. And let's move our sun a little bit. I want to move it to the left. Let's see what 0.5 gives us. Let's keep going. See, this is where I'm thinking that we might need something that has a little bit. We can also increase the gamma on this guy. That doesn't do much for us, surprisingly. I do think I want a little bit more. I feel like we might want a little bit more light, but I might fake that. Yeah, let's keep that for now and just start setting some things up. Okay, so we can see we have some ugliness in this map, in this mesh. And I'm a mildly concerned, so I probably should have caught that in Gaia, and that's probably more of a user error than anything else. We can see all these things that are pulled straight down kind of harshly. We might simplify this. Let's see what this displacement map gives us. And let's turn that off. Let's also like get at least that color map in here. Okay. I will say this is definitely one of those places where F-Storm's texture actual VRAM usage is pretty clutch. I don't know which normal map I want. Excuse me, I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. But we're loading in like a bunch of 8K maps, and some of them being 32-bit maps, and I think we're going to be just fine. I don't know if this is a bug or not. So this map I was expecting to have been leveled, normalized to this, right? Because I don't want to have to use a 32-bit displacement, 8K 32 displacement map if I don't have to. And it also feels like it's inverted again. This is where, like, Gaia, I would love to see all of this kind of stuff get streamlined. Which is to say, I know that these are ravines, right? So it wouldn't make sense that the bottom of them is getting displaced up to me. And so we'll just kind of play with that inside of 3dsMax. But I do still feel like there's a decent amount of guesswork that I've been dealing with. I am still like obsessed with how cool these maps look in and of themselves, though. I feel like you could use Gaia just for 2D art from these types of things. It reminds me of you guys. Did you guys have? It was definitely big in America when I was a kid. I don't remember what they were called. There were these little like boxes, and you put a piece of paper down on the center, and it would spin, and you would drip paint on it and get spin art, splatter art from it with like primary colors. Let me know if you guys had that. I wonder if that was just America or if those were everywhere. They were a ton of fun, I remember. And let's grab that guy. Okay. Convert all of them to F-Storm bitmaps. Oh, really, Knitting? That's kind of a bummer. Let's call it spin art toy. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, see, it's just this little thing. You put a piece of paper down there in the middle, and it spins, and you just drop paint onto it, and you get all these like cool, kind of trippy, psychedelic-y things to come out of it. Which is like, a little kid. It's amazing. So much fun. Should get one of those for my daughter. She would love that. Okay. So here we have our kind of rough scene we got going on here. We're going to add a light, I think, to kind of strengthen some of these highlights. But right now, let's go with the details normal map. And set it as a normal map. And we'll set that to like, I don't know, let's start with a meter maybe. And here's definitely where I like to, as much as possible when I've been setting these up. Obviously when I'm not trying to talk through it, like this goes more quickly. But I do, as much as I can, try and introduce elements like sort of one at a time. so that I can actually see what they're doing. So like, let's see if this normal map's doing anything cool for us. It does not appear like it is. Again, because we have like a 4K mesh. Let's maybe swap those and see what that one gives us. Should be a normal map. See, that one's just going, oops. Oh, son of a bitch. That's super harsh. Oh, see, that one kind of does have the, I don't think we need the inverted green. Let's try that again. Knitting, have you always loved art more than music or something as a kid? I'm curious. I played in bands in high school. But I also liked to draw and paint. I don't know which one I would say I loved more. They fulfilled two very different roles kind of I moved a lot growing up. And so playing in bands and music was very much a social thing for me, and I think obviously for many. And art and making stuff at home, and I started, by the way, with Bob Ross painting. Not a lie. I don't know which one I loved more. But I never really, I guess, ended up pursuing music in a serious way, in any meaningful way. Like, I play guitar for my daughter, and like when I'm waiting for renders and stuff. So I'd say in high school they filled two very different roles. And then as I got older, music kind of stayed as just something that I enjoy, whereas art obviously became a profession. That's kind of a non-answer. It's an interesting question, though. I'm going to think more about it, and I'll let you know. It's a very interesting question. Let's see what happens when we turn our color map on here. Oh! What on earth? Well, that ain't right. What on earth happened there? That is interesting to me. Oh, this is such a weird thing. Okay, so PNG 8 in Gaia. If you guys see up here, see how the color format's set to index? I wonder. I ran across this before, and I wasn't sure what had happened. And I'm guessing it's that I didn't understand what they were setting their exports to. Where's documentation? I assumed that it meant 8-bit, but it coming in as index, I'm pretty sure if we just say this is like a JPEG, good old JPEG, that things will go fine. Node reference, where's build manager? Interface. build manager, build and export, quick export, output note. This is not helpful. Okay, I do not recommend using PNG 8 for anything. Index color modes are strange, to say the least. I wonder if that's also why these are coming up weird. Doing a little troubleshooting today, folks. Nope, that's RGB. Was this an index? No. That's very strange to me. Either way, we are going to save this image mode. We're going to go from indexed color to RGB color. And we have some like color noise in that, but I'm just going to leave it because I kind of technically added that in there anyways. We're going to save that as final color RGB. I feel like at some point, I'm going to try and get all of these types of kinks figured out and set up a workflow and then make an actual video about how I do things properly. But I'm going to guess that the reason that we're seeing everything is black here, with the exception of what's white, which is also strange, I'm going to guess it has something to do with the index color. Let's see what happens if we swap this out here. Final color RGB. Oh, I still save that as a P. Oh, let's see what happens. Jafar, yes. It feels like one of the things that doesn't seem to help it at all is the fact that they keep changing things. Like when I've been watching tutorials and the like, I've seen a lot of different things, and I'm like, where is that? Oh, they changed the name of some setting or of some node, or they keep changing things from like the previous version, which makes it hard to see what people were doing in the last one. Ooh, what did I do? It makes it harder just to kind of follow along, I guess. But yeah, it's unnecessarily complicated. But the fact that they keep changing it, I think, means what on earth? I think that what it means is that they are trying to get it figured out. There is no reason this should be as coming out as black at this point. Let's try something real quick. I mean, I know it's a dark scene, so oops, that's not what I want. I want to put a sun in. I know it's a dark scene. But that map is not that dark. Right? Dust for it to be coming out black. But what I'm going to do, just to kind of test some things out again, 1.3 is almost always too high of a contrast level. And then we're going to go back to black and white. Not black and white, excuse me. Back to just a white material, and this should be like a mid-gray, something like that, yeah. And let's see what we're looking at here. And let's turn this guy up a bit. See what this guy's actually doing. Appears to be doing nothing. This is one of those F-Storm bugs, I do believe, where for some reason interactive render doesn't update with lights. Very annoying. Again, there's no reason we shouldn't be seeing some effect of that. Which we're not. But I think if we refresh it, it'll be fine. I don't. Well, I understand it. It seems like a bug. Here we go. There's some lights. That's a little bit harsh, but at least we can see some light here. We know that we have direct light on this guy. There we go. Lock camera in place. We'll soften it in a second, but now let's turn our light back on. Okay, so it's just really the gamma that's coming in so strangely. Like you can see, like, it's kind of dark. It's not that dark. Maybe it's some gamma setting I haven't fixed yet on my importing. That feels better to me. Okay, that feels a little bit better. And as we're looking at this, we might as well start kind of setting up some of the lighting and the atmosphere. So for this guy, I want him turned down, and I want him way, way softer, so we're going to make him huge. Don't want any harsh shadows. I do kind of like that it's catching light there and there. I think that'll be kind of nice. We might tweak this composition at some point. But I'm a huge believer of not kind of setting and just trying to get one thing working at any given time, because if you want everything to kind of sit together, I don't really care whether I'm making a perfectly realistic material. If it looks good in the frame buffer, I'm done. But if I set up crappy lighting, I'm going to work forever on the material, and then I might set up a whole bunch of deep shadows and crushed blacks and who knows what, and all of that work will have been wasted. So what was I going to do? I was going to add some vignette in, because a little bit of vignette always helps. Go with something like that, maybe a little bit brighter overall. Yeah, something like that might be nice. I'm not going to worry about color just yet, but I am going to add a bit of atmosphere into this guy. Environment, atmosphere on. Let's start with some neutral colors for scattering and absorption. A little bit of absorption. And what I'm going to do, I do this a lot, which is the scattering distance is super short. Obviously you can't see any atmosphere here. I could measure how high I need this to go, but I could also just do this. 250 sets us so you can kind of see where our atmosphere is sitting. And I need to be about twice that, so let's go with maybe 400, which is going to black this out, and then we'll go with like 500 for scattering distance. Okay, now we're starting to get somewhere, and I think I'm going to go a little bit higher. I don't like that it's scattering things into white. I wanted the scattering to give us some color. I thought I wanted the scattering to give us some color. But it's not really, not looking the way that I imagined it would. Which is okay. Let's go ahead and grab a little white balance on this guy. I think I want to soften down the blues. And then I'm just going to turn down. We got something that we're looking at here. Something that we can start to get a little bit excited about. Tassos, I'm trying out some dunes in Gaia. It's hard to get an interesting desert environment, at least for me, that I have no idea what I'm doing. Tassos, that's someone else who basically has no idea what he's doing either. I played around with like those 2 desert nodes. Wasn't thrilled with them. Didn't get super excited about it. But I don't think that I have seen a couple of images from Gaia of sand dunes. I think it's possible to do it well. It's just it doesn't give you that like one-click satisfaction, like ooh, that's exciting. That some of the other mountainy nodes give you. Okay, now let's start working on. Let's leave this for the time being, except for maybe I'm gonna go ahead and instance this same HDR into the multiply or into the alpha environment slot, just so I can darken it a little bit. Something like that. I think. We'll see. Excuse me. Okay, so now what we're going to do is try and fix this. And to do that, I'm actually going to turn atmosphere back off really quickly. Because this mesh came in at, you know, quote unquote, the wrong size for me. I was expecting it to come in at 2K or 1K, and it came in at 4K, relatively speaking. I'm gonna see what happens with this displacement, because the displacement's an 8K map, but it's supposed to be set to the same as the meshes. So I don't know what's going to happen here. This is what happens when you don't check your work before going live. You have to figure things out as it comes. I'd say that there's a pretty decent chance that if I was not live right now, if I was just playing around with this, I would go back into Gaia and figure out why it didn't export properly. I don't know why. I have no idea what the answer is to it. As to what I messed out. Details level. Okay, let's put this guy in here. Let's see what she gives us. Probably not anything at 2 centimeters. But we will find out in a moment. We'll also see. We should probably save. We're displacing a 8,000 triangle mesh with an 8,000 pixel 16-bit map. Yes, something happened, but not what I was hoping would happen. Let's see what happens if we displace it, by a meter. Oh, and it's safe. It's safe. Save, Michael. But we gotta wait for our computer to come back to us. There we go. And by there we go, I mean it's back alive. That's not what I want this to look like. But we do... I don't know if you guys remember, a little while back, I used a normal map, but used it as a bump map. And it gave like texture to rocks in a way that I liked. What we're seeing right here with this amount of displacement, I feel like is a mistake. Let's see what it looks like on this whole thing. But I'm very much okay with mistakes in this. I just feel like this might be a little bit too much of a mistake. Let's maybe cut that down in half. The hope, of course, is that if I do this more and more, I'll have a workflow where I'm not guessing. Like this workflow right now, if you want to call it a workflow, is kind of like trying to find out what works. And I don't think I'd reset X forms on this guy either, which means I'm displacing it much more than 0.4 meters. But yeah, hopefully at some point this goes away. What I do like is that like right here, all of these like super smooth things then get all of this detail in there. Even if it's not the detail it's supposed to be there. Why mess with it if it works, right? Let's see what this thing looks like if we turn it on. So now you can start seeing where it's actually like an error of we have most likely overlapping faces. Let's go down to 0.2. Oleg, it might. But it'd have to get through me to get to the window. So I might be going with it. But it's chugging through it, I think, even without bitmap compression turned on. So right now, we're using 2.9 gigs of VRAM. So we have plenty of headroom there. Displacement, I don't know how Andre does this. Displacement's only using a quarter of a gig, which is nuts to me. Geometry is using most of it. 1.5 gigs is just geometry. Okay, let's get this thing working properly though. I will. Oh, I should have done that. I will say one of the things that the fans, those GPU fans, which drive me absolutely crazy. One of the reasons they drive me crazy is because it just sounds like my computer's about to explode to me. It's like, oh, they're working so incredibly hard, but like even at idle, they sound like they're working hard. I'm very much looking forward to replacing those. Okay, we reset X form so that we're dealing with some real world scale. I'm gonna guess that this goes way smaller now once it updates. I'm gonna see where I'm gonna go. Did I actually save? I don't. You guys got me all discombobulated. I'm gonna blame it on you, even though it's absolutely not your fault. Let's see here. Come on. Come on, baby. There we go. Okay, saved. Thank God. Yeah, so see, like that looks worse than the mistaked version, right? Like, let's let this render it out and figure out a plan. I will say, these giant Gaia meshes, and this is the reason that I don't like using these meshes. These giant meshes just slow down the entire workflow when it comes to letting things update and everything else. But it lets you compose things, so it's like it's a double-edged sword. That's why I like Gaia, because I can use a low-res mesh when I don't mess up exporting and get best of both worlds. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay, let's, I mean, this looked better. So this is at a meter. Let's push this until it looks bad again. Not bad, but wrong. What, we scaled that up a pretty decent ways. Probably should have paid attention to that when I was resetting the X form, but what can you do? Only onwards. We move onwards. How long have we been going on this? Coming up on an hour. See, this, I feel like, without the map on, see, that's kind of my favorite so far. The reason that I like it is that we have all of this detail in here that when we turn the map on, even with this amount of displacement, it gets weird. You kind of lose it. Maybe we just want a little bit of this map today. Maybe more than that. Just a little bit. Just enough that we can start to kind of differentiate the snow and the stone. I feel like all that suggestions that I didn't do a great job with that map, which is probably true. I do kind of like this. Let's see. Now, again, we're cheating with a bunch of things. I do want to try another thing really quickly. Well, we're going to do two things. First, we are going to turn this off. We'll turn this back on, and we are going to turn back on the environment. Too washed out, but let's select the camera, and maybe we put our burn value back up to 1. We put our contrast up to maybe 0.2. And we bring our exposure down. Not quite doing anything for me just yet. But we're getting the idea that I like, which is like kind of like this soft morning sun, which is not that bright just yet. Starting to work, which I kind of like. I want to try something really quickly. So you can see like part of our problem is we have all this like really harsh edged geometry, which I think is part of just like something you're going to have to deal with in exporting these meshes, and also partly because I made these ravines way too deep and I wasn't paying attention. I feel like a lot of it comes from save, Mike. Save. The fact that you're working in lower resolutions in Gaia all of the time, and going up to 4K even means like hitting 4K and waiting a couple of minutes before you actually get to see it, and then you can't really adjust anything at that point. You have to go back to 2K, otherwise it's just too much waiting. But you tend to like overdo things so that you can see them at the lower resolution meshes, and then you export them at this, and you're like, oh well, that's why do I have these like ravines here? This was just supposed to be like a little subtle indentation. So hopefully as I use it more, I will get more used to that, I guess you can say, and just kind of be able to guess it a little bit better. But putting a relax modifier on it, value of 1, 2 iterations worth, it softens everything, but let's see if the displacement saves it. And let's save before we have the render actually do some computing. And now we wait. RIP CPU rendering indeed. They're not RIP CPUs. Gaia, when you're actually working in Gaia, it doesn't utilize my entire CPU, which is a shame. It's usually sitting somewhere between like 20 and 60% when it's updating. When you actually are exporting maps and meshes and baking stuff or building stuff for export, then it uses almost my entire CPU, which is awesome. And I think I read somewhere that they're working on some GPU acceleration, but I don't remember that specifically, and I don't know whether or not I'm making that up or not. But maybe. Yeah, see, I think all of this black area is actual mistakes in, from this being too displaced. But I kind of like it. And then the fact that we have atmosphere keeps it from being like black. I think we do need to tone it down just a bit. It's a bit heavy. So this, I'm looking at it right now with displacement turned off and the map turned on. What do we... What? Come on. Displacement's turned off right now. The colors are back on. You can see how soft everything's gotten, which is not what we want. Let's see here. This is one of those things where you would expect the normal map to be able to bring detail back into these surfaces. And maybe it's just that my settings for the normal maps aren't right. They do look strange in a way that I haven't figured out fully yet. Let's see what happens if we like crank them. Give me like 2000. So even the details normal map, you can see like it's really bumping up this stuff, but like there's no detail here. I need to figure out how to do. I think that's. I need to get better in Gaia. Is my hunch. Because that looks like garbage. But then we go back to this guy. Let's settle at like 2.5 meters of displacement. I don't know why it had to update when I typed that in because it wasn't even active, and now we have to wait for the actual displacement to come and see if we get anything nice here. Yeah, we got some detail in there. Probably enough. Let's just change something just a little bit so that we get it to restart. Okay. Let's see. What do we do now? This has been like an hour. And it's been more kind of troubleshooting than like making something, which I guess doesn't fully surprise me. Let's just kind of have a little pan around our scene here and see what we got going on. So like that looks like garbage. Where like that's not usable. Like this, at this distance, this stuff over here, that will be usable in the background. But all these foreground, you can see kind of the stressing, and that might be actually a what's it called? Ray threshold issue. That just looks worse than it did before, doesn't it? But at least it's not errored. But yeah, like this is already kind of obviously not working for us. Maybe we just gotta go with like... So this is doing what I did before, which is using a normal map as a bump map. Which, for purists, is probably a terrible thing, but I actually think that looks better. It's like all I want is like some texture in there. There would be some kind of texture that's going in there. But the level of geometry, even with displacement here, where like that feels like the softness in the background feels okay with me. Obviously things get softer as they get further away. But then at this point, I would want it to be sharp. And if I go higher on displacement, I think it's just going to look bad, is my guess. So we have a couple of options of what we could do. Tassos, no, they are I mean, that's kind of fun, actually, to be honest with you. I mean, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look high quality, but it's fun. I mean, some parts of it do look better, depending on how you're thinking about things. But then, foreground's a mess. So either way, so there's a couple things that we could do. A is that we could just leave this like this and say, like, at the back of an image with a little bit of depth of field, we're never ever going to see that anyway. So, like, we have some cool texture. Let's leave it. But obviously, you know, at this point, we're at the whims kind of, we're going with that kind of mentality of let's see what it gives us, which I think we could probably stay, you know, for another hour on this, and we could make something cool. There's some really, like, cool little moments happening, even though the parts of it are mistakes. And we could go in right now, like, the snow texture is obviously very flat. And we could go in and add some, you know, like, noise textures and Voronoi textures and the like, and start to break that up using masks and separate materials, which is one option. But it's a lot of work. The goal, for me at least, is I'd like to be able to make something in Gaia that I think looks good, hit export, do the same 2 or 3 steps in Max every time to bring it in, and have like a repeatable pattern so that I know that what I'm looking at, I have a reasonable expectation from what I'm looking at in Gaia, what I can make out of it in 3dsMax that I don't have yet. Otherwise, like, it's a lot of guessing. And like, if I could go in and add some rock textures. I could turn off this displacement and I could add in a new rock texture. I could split the mesh. You would have to use 2 meshes because you can't use displacement for an F-store material. By the material, you have to do it by the mesh. You could split the mesh, use the same map that you could use to separate the materials. You could use it as an opacity map and then just displace the rock using like a Megascan's rock texture so that you're getting some detail into like that's really irksome to me. That like smoothness there, that should be jagged. So there are ways around it, but they're all a lot of work. And for something like this, I want to be able to make it in Gaia and just bring it into Max and not mess with it. For something, if I was just trying to make an image of a landscape, would be in pretty good shape, right? Like, okay. But if I was trying to do something specific, or if I was trying to just try to make like a quick background and bring it in, I guess as a background this would maybe work. I know I'm just kind of talking out loud. But, Tassos, to answer your question, to circle all the way back around to your question, are these textures good enough for an eye level view with some foreground that is close up? No. Asterisk. If you're using, if you have a good result here that you're happy with as the background, if we start to get anywhere near these, oops, in the foreground, let's just focus on that guy so that we get a little bit more controlled. We're gonna start, we might be looking at snow here. Let's go ahead and, so even with all of this atmosphere and everything else, you can still see that this is only at 2K resolution. You can see how like mushy that edge is and how like these are all artifacts, and that's pixel artifacts. You can tell by it being a square, right? And I wouldn't even call this foreground just yet. What you can do, however, is like this looks fine. I don't feel like I have complete control over how this looks. Kind of did a bunch of guesswork, kind of changed a bunch of settings until it looked good. But as far as like fidelity in the background, that looks good to me. So what you could do, and what I did, even though that image obscured a lot, what I did in this image, where's the full resolution one? So this image is at 4,000 pixels. It's not perfect, but this was kind of like my first stab at it. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this looks. And this is a 1024 by 1024 mesh with an 8K displacement map on it. It's just much, much smaller. So it's scaled down. It extends. We're looking at maybe like an eighth of this mesh. And then this mesh in the background is a separate mesh for the background. So splitting them up and then making the one at the smaller scale and the other one at the bigger scale. It's kind of twice the work, but then I think you can make something for the foreground that will work well. But that's why I wanted to check the 16K, and I'm so sad that it didn't export. But honestly, I don't think doubling this resolution, like, that's a pixel that we're seeing right there. So like doubling that resolution, so that's 4 pixels, is still super pixelated. So I don't think 16K is the answer. I think you have to make 2 meshes, which then, as I'm thinking, I'm just kind of game planning the things I'd like to figure out a methodology for doing, for myself at least. What you really want to figure out at that point. So let's move this to like 1K at very least, so we have something acceptable to look at. What you'd really want to kind of figure out, I think, or at least like what I would like to figure out, is you can hit this little guy. Nope, not the force refresh. Yes. You can create lots and lots of variations. That didn't seem to change that much. Let's go back here and... Or is it thinking? I don't know what happens right there. You can go and just change like a couple of basic seed values back at the beginning. And like you can change this seed to just another random number. And we're going to see things start to move. Or we should see things start to move. You can create a lot of variations really quickly if you have like a setting that you like. Right, so now we started to have some little changes. We could go in and we could add, if we wanted like Mo swirl, right? Like we can create a lot of variations pretty quickly. If you're doing ridges, you can do like very different ones, super duper quickly. What I would like to figure out how to do is to basically say like, obviously there's like a materiality and everything to this all set up. If we turn this guy on, we wait, so much waiting. And then we go back and press G on this one. Okay. So we have like a idea of a material setup all throughout this. What would be nice is if there was a way to say like, just give me this corner and blow it up to full size. So that I can have this little section where I know I want to put my camera, or like this corner at 8K itself, or just like one little square of it. As far as I can tell, based off of the way that Gaia handles scale. I haven't found an easy way to do that yet, but I also haven't fully looked for it. So if I could generate this whole setup at different scales as opposed to just variations, that would be a game changer as far as like foreground, midground, and background elements without having to make them over and over and over again. All that's to say, I'm going to continue playing with this, and that means you guys are probably going to hear me ramble more and more on this, and hopefully we'll keep finding some cool stuff. But that's where we're going to probably end, I think, today. What day is today? Today's Monday. I don't think I have anything planned yet for tomorrow. Guys, we're flying by the seat of the pants over here. We'll be doing something tomorrow. There's a chance that we'll be doing more stuff with Gaia. I doubt we'll be trying to make an image out of this, because of more importance than that to me is that we go back and we figure out a methodology to figure out some of a solution of some sort. I'd like to be able to create a consistent like foreground and midground and background without doing a ton of extra work to create two completely separate things, but so that I can use this in a more flexible manner. This is how I'm using it so far. Obviously, I'm still figuring it out. But Dario, yes, I love doing paintovers. Send it to mike@droki.com, and I will get to it as soon as I can for the next time we do paintovers. It should be Friday, because that's when I do paintovers. It's Monday, folks. What can you do? Okay, that's it for today. Guys, thank you for being here and hanging out. I do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you guys tomorrow at 1 Eastern time. And until then, be well and be kind to one another. Tassos, so do I. They like when they have a tutorial, and I assume you're talking about Quad Spinner, the tutorials that they have that are doing what you want to do are really helpful, but just if they don't have a specific one, their documentation's not great. It seems like they're trying to work on those things. I did find tutorials by Cowsmanot to be quite helpful. Tended to be quite clear and deliberate. But one of the things that you can see, like right off the bat, this is like the version before the one that I'm using, and like things have already changed. And then some of these have changed names. The name of the actual node has changed between versions, so there's still some figuring to do. But he's been pretty helpful on top of where Quad Spinner has missed something. So I recommend checking it out. All right, guys, have a great day. Be well, be kind to one another. Cheers to you all. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Until tomorrow, it's awkward time. Beep. Oh, I missed the button. Ooh.